The Roman Empire. At its peak, Rome controlled the entire Mediterranean, stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia, and housed over 70 million people under a single government. It took 300 years to destroy it completely. Rome didn't fall in a single moment. It rotted from the inside first. Emperors were being assassinated and replaced so rapidly that in a 150-year period, Rome cycled through over 20 different rulers. The military stopped being Roman citizens fighting for Rome and became mercenaries fighting for whoever paid them. The economy collapsed as Rome debased its currency so aggressively that hyperinflation wiped out the middle class entirely. Then, the Germanic tribes broke through the borders. The Visigoths, the Vandals, the Huns driving everyone westward in waves of violence. On September 4th, 476 AD, the Germanic chieftain Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, a 16-year-old boy named Romulus Augustulus, and sent his imperial insignia to Constantinople. No dramatic last stand, no final battle. Just a teenager handing over a crown. Rome didn't fall, it dissolved. The Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous land empire in human history. At its peak, it stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. The Mongol conquests killed an estimated 40 million people, roughly 10% of the entire world population. Nothing had ever existed like it. Nothing has since. And it destroyed itself. Mongol tradition divided an empire among all sons rather than passing it intact to one heir. Genghis Khan died in 1227. His sons divided the empire. Their sons divided it again. Within 50 years, the unified empire had fractured into 4 separate kingdoms that spent their energy warring with each other. Then the Black Death arrived, traveling along Mongol trade routes and killing tens of millions across their territories. Local populations began pushing back. The Yuan dynasty was expelled from China. The Ilkhanate collapsed. The Golden Horde fragmented. Genghis Khan built something unprecedented. His grandsons destroyed it, arguing over who owned it. The Egyptian Empire. Ancient Egypt endured for over 3,000 years. It built the pyramids, developed one of the earliest writing systems, and survived 30 dynasties. Then, it was gone in less than 3 centuries. External raiders weakened the military. The economy collapsed as conquered territories stopped paying tribute. The priesthood grew so powerful it reduced the pharaoh to a figurehead. Egypt split internally, and the invasions came one after another. Libyans, Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks. Alexander the Great arrived in 332 BC. After his death, his general Ptolemy founded a Greek dynasty that ruled for 3 centuries. The last ruler of that dynasty was Cleopatra VII. When she died in 30 BC, Rome absorbed Egypt as a province. 3,000 years of civilization ended not with a war, but with a queen's suicide, and the Roman administrator filing the paperwork. The Persian Empire. The Achaemenid Persian Empire stretched from Greece to India and controlled over 40% of the entire world's population, a record never surpassed before or since. It was destroyed in less than a decade by a single man. Alexander the Great crossed into Persia in 334 BC with 40,000 soldiers against an empire of hundreds of thousands. It didn't matter. He defeated the Persians at Granicus, crushed them at Issus, where Emperor Darius III fled the battlefield personally, abandoning his own family, destroyed them at Gaugamela, where Darius fled again. This time, his own generals had enough. A nobleman named Bessus assassinated Darius III while fleeing, hoping to use the murder as a bargaining chip with Alexander. Alexander gave Darius a full royal burial, declared himself the legitimate successor, and hunted Bessus down personally. The greatest empire in the ancient world collapsed because its emperor ran from his own battles twice, and his own men killed him for it. Alexander was 30 years old. The Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty ruled China for over 400 years. It established the Silk Road, invented paper, and governed 60 million people through one of the most sophisticated systems the ancient world had produced. Its collapse was entirely self-inflicted. Wealthy aristocrats accumulated vast estates, while peasant farmers lost everything. Child emperors placed on the throne by court factions meant real power drifted to regents and eunuchs, fighting each other rather than governing. In 184 AD, the peasants broke. The Yellow Turban Rebellion exploded across China. The Han government couldn't crush it alone, so regional warlords were given authority to raise their own armies. They did, and then they kept them. By the time the rebellion ended, China had fragmented into competing warlord territories. The emperor was a puppet. In 220 AD, the last Han emperor formally abdicated. 400 years of dynasty ended by a wealth gap, a captured government, and the catastrophic mistake of arming the men who would destroy it. The Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire dominated Mesoamerica for less than a century, but built one of the most formidable military states in the Americas, controlling millions through warfare, tribute, and systematic terror. It was destroyed in 2 years by 600 men. When Hernán Cortés landed in Mexico in 1919 with roughly 600 soldiers, the situation should have been laughably one-sided. But Cortés understood something immediately. Every territory the Aztecs controlled had been conquered by force and was paying tribute under duress. Those peoples weren't loyal. They were waiting for an opportunity. Cortés gave them one. He formed alliances with every people the Aztecs had brutalized. By the time he marched on Tenochtitlan, he wasn't leading 600 Spaniards. He was commanding over 100,000 indigenous allies who despised the Aztecs. Smallpox arrived simultaneously, tearing through a population with zero immunity. Tenochtitlan fell in August 1921. Cortés didn't conquer the Aztecs. He handed their enemies the opportunity they'd been waiting for.